Carolina da Costa, Graca da Costa, as my guest on this panel this evening. Uh, I told them to be relaxed and not to be tense, in spite of the technology. They have a very interesting story to tell us. And maybe the first question should be tell us about your book and how it came about.
Um, Hello, Frederick. Hello, Graca. Thank you very much for the invitation. Uh, it's uh, it's a pleasure to be here with you, and it is my first time ever. So apologies if I make any mistakes.
Just
Um,
a small interruption, if you don't mind, Carolina. There seems to be some echo. So, Grasa, can I request you to put your phone off? That is the first button at the bottom. So you just put it off when you're not talking. So maybe the echo could go away. Just Grasa and me will put our phones off, our voice off, yeah, and then Carolina can try. Sorry about that.
that's okay, no problem. Um, um, so thank you again for this opportunity to be able to be here with you and share the story I wrote. Um, just
So
the book.
tell us how it came about. Tell us how the book started, because that's the most
Um
interesting part.
well, the book started actually in 1963. My father started to make notes about the important events and facts of his life. And it was his wish that if he ever get married and have children, his first child should continue to write facts about his or her life. So it happened that the person is me. When my father started to put these notes down, he was single and he was in Mozambique. So my father is from Goa. He was born in Goa in 1936, and he was born in Saligão. So he lived in Goa until 1957, and after that he left to join his father in Lawrence Marques in Mozambique. Now it is called Maputo. And so he was in single at the time, and that is when he started to write. I got these notes from my sister in 2000 after my father died, and well, I left it. I left it alone because first of all, I didn't feel up to the task. Second, I didn't think I had anything important to say, so I just left it alone. But as time went by, and so it was 2018 when I started to work on the book. And the reason I decided to do that was because I felt there was a need for my family and friends to know a little bit more about my father, because there was not much known, and I realized that because my father was a private person, he didn't share so much. People did not know him, did not know us, and because they did not know the facts, so they probably they didn't have the full picture about how my father was as a person. And then so that was it. It just came like that.
So,
But
so you wrote the book for your family and friends, not as a book really. It was a private thing.
uh, I beg your pardon, I couldn't
You,
get
you
your
wrote
question.
you wrote the book for your family and friends for a small circuit.
Mainly, yes, because I just wanted to share with them. Um, I didn't expect the interest would be so so big, but uh, it also was quite interesting because I just, now that you asked the question, I remember the a book of one of my favorite authors is a Brazilian author called Paulo Coelho. And in one of his books, I believe it was The Alchemist, he says, when you have to do something, the whole universe conspires. So in order for you to do
Do it.
what
Yeah.
what has to be done. So
So in the bargain, you wrote a book which happened to be the first book on the story of the Goans in Mozambique, at least in English. Would that be right?
uh, there is a book. There is a book by a Portuguese professor called Valentino Viegas. I don't think the book is translated into English, but the in Portuguese is called Os Figos da Sombra, and he mentions about his stay in Mozambique as well, and then in Portugal. But I don't know. To my knowledge, I don't know any book that covers the process of the colonization of Mozambique, and Goans have to go to Portugal, and their life in Portugal and their life in Mozambique. I'm not aware of.
Yeah, but now since you're telling us the story online and you're giving us the formal version of it, but in your book you have actually narrated it in a very interesting and gripping manner, where you talk about how Graca sent you the book herself, sent you this old notebook which is in the form of a very old document, and how you received it and how you got it. So maybe Grasa might want to tell us of how she found it and what she thought about while sending it to you. If you don't mind, Carolina, just to avoid, we'll put our volumes off while Grasa
Yeah.
talks.
Okay. Okay, thank you for this opportunity, and very happy to be here joining you both. So about the book, I think I love true stories, and when I knew about my dad's book, the notes, and I thought it was like a romance, because yeah, it is, because it is a true story, and I love true stories. Reading books, or even when they are on the TV, like in the movies. So I think it's nice to the young people to know how courage the eldest ones have done, and how they they went from one side of the world to another one. It
Apart
is
apart apart from that, Grasa, sorry,
yes.
you'll just put your mic on mute. Sorry. Apart from that, there is also this lot of drama and tragedy and bits of happiness and challenges and tough times. Yeah, would you all agree?
Yes, it is, because it was a very uh, um, courageous act to leave India and go abroad, because on those days I think it was like a one-way passage because now you can travel. One day you can be here, and tomorrow you can be in the United States. But in those days, when you go somewhere, it was very difficult to come back. And especially in this book, when my father left Goa, and he did his own, he got married and had his life, and so many years have passed. And in those days there were no internet, no phones. People just lost track of the life. So the family who stayed in Goa, all of the family, they didn't get the picture of how life has developed in
Yeah, but
Mozambique.
in addition, Garasa, if I could just add, in addition to that, the argument I made is that your dad's life also covered these three very crucial events that happened in both our parts of the world. That is 1947, the end of British rule in India; 1961, the end of Portuguese rule in Goa; and 1974-75, when Portuguese rule ends in Mozambique, and you have this upheaval there. So it was very tough. And by the way, we have a comment from Fiona Dias Saxena, who is from
Yes.
Saligaon herself, and she's the only one who remembered your dad by name. She said, "Oh." She said
Oh,
Quintin's daughters, and she's actually in the UK now. So she's made a comment here saying it's at the bottom of your screen. She says it was
yeah,
courageous
it is.
indeed. So that's that. But maybe Carolina would like to come back and tell us a bit more about how she went on with the book and why family histories are important, perhaps.
Uh, yes, along these years since I received the notes from my sister, I came across with many interesting people, many interesting stories, and I had read documents and books and very sometimes casually, sometimes I looked for it, but it was an amazing thing that as one time I came across with a book written by Ivo de Figueiredo. I had and it mentioned, so I've got the book here, and it has a map of the places, and it just I caught my attention of the word Saligão. I said, what? From all the places in the world, and I
This
just
tiny village, this tiny village, this tiny village in a tiny state, in of course in a big country, but now. So,
yeah,
so of course,
it
just
is,
to interrupt, sorry for interrupting. So, Ivo de
yeah.
Figueiredo is this author who is based in Norway, and he's part Goan, and he also traces his roots to Saligaon, and he has done this story talking about his family's voyage, but I think to British East Africa, and then to Sweden or Norway, and yeah, he's a prominent writer there. He's written on Ibsen and things like that. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
And so in 2018, I visited Goa, and a friend of mine gave me a book, which is written by Mel de Souza. This book, Feasts, Feni, and Firecrackers. And well, I was in Goa at the time. I didn't start reading it, but I had the intention to read. And so when I started reading the book when I came back home, and I mentioned, so the book was about Saligão, and he describes his childhood, his friends, what he did, and all the illustrations was so accurate that I could actually see the people. And one of the descriptions in the book he mentioned about his friend, the person who used to play with, and it suddenly I thought, well, this person is my father, because the way he described it looks, oh, this is must be my father. So I got in touch with the author, and we exchanged a few emails, and then we came to the conclusion that yes, he was the person he described in the book was my father, and he was one of his friends. And then so it started like we talking about my father's childhood, and it actually covered the part of my father's life that I didn't know much about it. So meeting Mel was just amazing, amazing thing that happened when I was writing the book. So it
So
led.
just to interrupt, I think Ben's book, Mel D'Souza's book is amazing. He
Yes,
calls it Life of what the subtitle is Fish. Sorry, the title is Fish, Winnie, and Firecrackers, and the
a life
subtitle
of
is
a
The Life
village,
of a Schoolboy Growing Up
life
in
of a
Village in
yes,
Colonial Goa or something. So that's an
yes,
amazing book, and he's an artist and things like that. So of course, having
yes.
said that, now Fiona's making a comment here where she says, sorry, not that one. Fiona says something about Saligaon is world famous. I cannot get her comment. She says Saligaon is world famous, and I'm sorry about boasting about it. She says here, Fiona, I'm sorry to tell you, you're absolutely boasting about it. In Saligaon, we just have a problem of having too many publishers and too many expats all over the world. So everyone is writing books and they're getting published. So it's the only village which has 7 or 8 books on it. And now we are trying to find out ways to control the population of publishers down here. So anyway, I'm just joking. It's okay. It's okay. Thanks for your comments. But yeah. So we have someone else also commenting. I'm getting lost in all the comments coming in. So
Eu tô aqui no Rodrigues.
yes. Okay. Can you highlight that comment? I mean, is it? Yes, I'm trying to find his comment. So there are some people who have anyone. I'm supposed to be doing it,
Been
but
to
it seems
Beira, na Cala, meet Major da Goans in Beira, 1986, Coutinhos.
I saw a comment here which is just lost somewhere. But if you unhide it, no, wait. I'm sorry if you, Mr. Rodriguez, if you could just type it in again, we'll be grateful. Sorry for this slip up on this side. So no, I'm again very sorry for interrupting you so much. As I
No,
always say,
no
don't
problems.
talk when I'm interrupting. But but anyway, I wanted to add just one thing here, that it's very fascinating that you all have not spent any long time of stay in Goa. Both the daughters of Costa, and Quintino also left Goa as a young boy. So the kind of connections that you all have kept are simply amazing and interesting. In that sense. Sorry, carry on, Carolina. Before I interrupt again.
Um, yeah, that I was just talking about the book that and my exchanged emails with Mel, and it was interesting that I met Mel personally in Canada in 2019, and having decided to meet Mel, so I thought it would be a good idea to translate the book that I had just wrote in Portuguese into English, so Mel could have a better idea of my father's life, because he was also interested in my father's life, because he lost contact with my father, and so I got a great help from Mel with these illustrations and his storytelling, and it was just and his help in putting the book together, which was very nice, very kind of him, and that was it. But actually, I thought about the structure of the book when I was in Goa in 2018, when I was walking that path that I made. I think Gracinha can put on the slide. This is the book. It's
Yeah.
very famous about.
Can you just show it a bit slowly? Yeah, a bit slowly so that we can see it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've described that walk very nicely, and it's along that small narrow lane connecting
Yes,
the village, your home to the cemetery in that sense, and
yes.
the church. Sorry.
Yeah. So the structure of the book actually came into my mind when I was walking along the path. So it just had to put all together when I. So it just was. It was not a big thing, but yeah, that was it. That is how the book came about.
Interesting. So you're saying that you did the English edition just so that a few more people could read it. It was not intended to come out as a book. But what I found most interesting, Carolina, was your description in a very simple but very touching language about. Of course, one is your equation with your dad, and daughters have a very close equation with their fathers normally. And the other thing was this full life of the Goans in Mozambique, which doesn't go into very theoretical or deep or sociological analysis, but gives you an idea of how people lived there. So maybe y'all could both tell us a bit about your times there and how it was.
Um, yeah. Well, I lived in Mozambique for 10 years between 1966 to 76, and so the life we had was comfortable. Um, the Goans were a very close community. It was divided not, but there was three main groups, main associations. One was known as Casa de Goa, then the other one was the Clube dos Operários Goeses, and there was a Clube Indo-Português. And so people used to go there for parties, for New Year party, carnival, and whatever occasion there was. So there was always something going on, so to speak. My father was a member of the Clube dos Operários Goeses, and he was also a member of the Clube Desportivo Indo-Português. And that explains the reason, because my father was a keen sports person in Goa. He was an athlete. He used to run. He was a fast runner at the St. Joseph High School in Arpora, and he won many trophies. It was known because he was very fast, and so he enjoyed football, so tennis. So he played all these sports in Mozambique, and he also liked playing the violin. He knew music, and he used to compose, write lyrics and music for the plays called theatre in Konkani, and he performed in some clubs, playing the violins or singing or cracking jokes. That was his his way of life. And so we, as a family, we used to have our friends, and most of them were Goans. We also had Portuguese people, like white Portuguese or Chinese or Hindus or Africans as well. There was quite a mixed community, and everyone seemed to get on quite well from what I remember. And later on in the early 70s, the fashion was Indian films, Indian movies. They started to come to Mozambique. So Amitabh Bachchan, Sashi Kapoor, Rishi Kapoor, all those, Shamila Tagore, all these famous Bollywood stars used to. The films were very popular, so we used to go to the cinema on Sundays after mass. So first thing was mass, and then we used to have lunch, and then we all had cars, and so whoever didn't have a car used to go to other people's cars, and children didn't count. So most small children would go in the booth, which is not. We can't think about this now, but that was those days, And so it was first was the adults, and then the teenagers, and then the small children would go wherever they could fit, and that was maybe an hour drive from the city to Matola. There was a place called São Gabriel Cinema, and we just had 2 sessions, 2 films, and then when finished by 5 o'clock, and then we would come back, and then we would go to somebody's house and have dinner, and that was the Sunday.
So you wrote something about your father in the book. I wonder if you want to read it, Carolina. You mentioned something about that he was a simple man leading a simple life, but he did everything for everyone else, or one of those passages that.
Yeah, he did. You might maybe you were thinking about the prologue.
Yeah, whatever, whichever part you feel comfortable to read, because tell us a bit about the man. Here's the person who started it all, and he's not there with us because he went away pretty early. That's another story, but I think what he started was very interesting.
Yeah, about my father. I can. To start with, my father wasn't a professional. He didn't go to university, so he just did a SC, I think.
SSC, yeah.
Yes, and then he worked in different jobs in Lourenço Marques. I don't think he worked in Goa, but he worked in a hospital as a nurse, and then he worked in the court as a scribble to
Clerk.
write.
Clerk, clerical,
yes. Because those days typing machines were not so common. Yes, so he had to write all the notes by hand, and he had a very good
handwriting,
writing skills. So he wrote that, but his main job was working as a clerical and for Caminhos de Ferro de Mozambique.
Mozambique Railways.
Yeah, the railways of Mozambique. My father was, he didn't write any book himself. He wasn't a famous person. For us, he was famous, but we always look him up.
No, but I think Carolina, in those days that was the norm. No, I mean, apart from a very few who were highly educated or things like that, most people were diploma holders or high school pass out. So today the standards have there's been an inflation of standards anyway. So please read something from the book which you think.
I could just say
na página 10. Tens aí na página 10.
Segundo parágrafo.
Sim, he was the man.
Yes. He was the man I was lucky enough to call father. In fact, he did nothing important that was written in any history books. By right, he did everything he could to improve the lives of those around him. He gave a great deal, but asked very little in return. And whatever he asked, he returned twofolded. So that that I think explains a little bit about my father's personality. He was that kind of person.
Very interesting. Would you like to share your screen at this point, or maybe Grasa can help you to share the screen? And there is a screen share button at the bottom, the third one from the left, and you can, some presentation if you want to make a few more points there.
Queres
So
que eu faça passo os
Sim,
slides? Os slides?
passam por um e depois eu explico. Sorry.
no problem. Carry on, carry on. Perfectly fine. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's it.
Can you see?
We can see it perfectly. Carry on.
So this is you can change.
Consegues ver?
Sim.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's the slides are turning and we can see it well. Carry on. No problem. This is the cover of
This
the
is
book.
this is how the book looks like.
That road
That's
is
my
a
father.
fascinating road. No, it's one of the most beautiful in these parts. So with
Yes,
coconut trees on
yes.
both sides. Carry on. Carry on. Sorry for interrupting.
And this is an illustration from Mel, and that illustrates my the Nick Vadó Saligão Ararim. So this is this one here is my father's house, and then this is just to describe how they play. They used to play gordé,
Marbles.
marbles.
Got there. Yeah,
Yes,
got there.
yes.
Got there. Okay.
And this is also another photograph. Also, I borrowed from Mel, and it shows the road how it looks like now. So my
Just in
father's
front.
house.
Just in front. Yeah, just in front of your
Yeah,
house.
that is my father's house here in the yellow bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so that's a recent photo. So, as I mentioned before, this is my father between 1954 and 1958 when he was a student in Arpora High School, St. Joseph. And he used to be, he used to take part in athletics. So he won several
Wow.
trophies and medals, and most his specialty was he was a sprinter. So he used to run 200 meters, 600 meters, 400 meters, and so he enjoyed that. Uh, another thing that my father was quite keen on was to make Christmas stars for the Christmas celebrations. So those days, all the Christian houses used to have a star, and the priest would go around and give a prize to the best star. So one year, my father made an original star with 8 points. Christmas star is with paper and that was not seen before. So it took me. It was quite a challenge to describe to Mel how it looked like, but I think it looked like this. So Mel was kindly drew this star, the 8 point Christmas star was.
Let me come in at this stage. So what I find most fascinating is that both of you all have never lived in Goa for any extended period of time, but you are growing up with a Goan ambience wherever you are, whether it's in Mozambique or Portugal or London. And now you are tracking your father's footsteps in Goa as a youth, which is like maybe at that point even 60, 70 years back. So things have changed a lot, and you are convincing Mel, who is sitting in Canada, somewhere in Canada, on how to get this picture recreated. So it's fascinating what you all are doing. So carry on, carry on.
I just had I remember my father telling us about this 8 point Christmas star. So I just wanted to when I mentioned it to Mel, he said, "Oh, I haven't heard that. I don't think you were right." I said, "No, I remember because he tried to make one when we were there on holidays in 1998. So it took a little bit of sketch, but because of Mel's experience and his also knowledge about Goa and how things worked those days, so he managed to. He told me, I think I know how your dad made, because your dad had a quite interesting mind. He used to make things very unusual in an unusual way. So I think it is right. I don't have a photograph of those days, but I trust Mel.
So Mel is 80 years old, 80 plus, and he's sitting in Canada, and he's got his memories which are probably 65, 70 years old, and he's working out things there. Amazing, amazing in that
Yeah,
sense.
it
So
is.
yeah,
It is amazing. Yes, because
yeah.
Mel is a year younger than my father,
That would be
so
that would be
that
now.
explains.
Now he would be.
So. Hmm?
Your father would have been.
My father would have been 84,
Huh.
will be 85 this year, if he was alive, yes. This photo was in Mozambique, Lawrence March, in 1957. So my father took this photo as soon as he arrived. And you can see at the end, the building here, the white building is the cathedral. The
Very
cathedral
famous.
of Lawrence Marx is Our Lady of Immaculate Conception. So, in this church, my grandparents from my mom's side got married here. My mom and my dad got married here, and my sister and I were baptized here. So,
Wow. Lot of
so
history.
that's
Lot of
quite
history. Yeah.
that's quite a
Yeah.
story in this church.
Right.
And that is a little bit about the social activities that Frederick were you asking about earlier. So that's the three main associations in Mozambique at the time. So this was in Lawrence Marques. So we had this Instituto Goano, also known as Clube Goês, Associação de Mútuo Auxílio aos Operários Indo-Portugueses, also known as Clube dos Operários Goeses, e Clube Desportivo Indo-Português. These are the three main ones. This is the house where that showed on that street, the yellow wall. And this is my father's house. So the house that on the previous photo, in the first photo, where was a small house, it was built as a new one. My father built. So we traveled to Goa in 1969 as a family. So it was myself and my parents, and these two are my grandparents, my grandmother and my grandfather. That's how I take the name after my grandmother. She was called Carolina. And my grandfathers requested that my father would build a house because the old one was it was an old house, and so he fulfilled his wish. So this was finished in 1971. And that's a cinema ticket. I found the cinema ticket that the cinema we used to go, Cinema São Gabriel in Matola, to see the Indian movies. And so Mozambique was a Portuguese colony, and it got independent in 1975, on the 25th of June, 1975. So there was a choice that people would had to make: either stay in Mozambique or go to other countries, either to the Goans were considered going back to Goa. Some of the Goans would thought, okay, we go to Portugal. Not many Goans knew Portugal. Most of them had just heard about it. No, they had no connections to Portugal. But there was, for my parents, it was a good thing to go to Portugal instead of Goa, because at the time both my parents were working for the Portuguese government, so their job was secured, and so they decided to move to Portugal. But that was a challenge in Portugal itself, because Portugal had just come from they had they just was new to democracy. They had a revolution in April 1974. So there was a different regime. The politics changed, and so they got democracy. They were a democratic country from 1975 onwards. So they were also struggling, and with the situation in Portugal and the situation in the colonies, because that was not Mozambique alone, but all the African colonies like Angola, Cape Verde, Guinea-Bissau, São Tomé and Príncipe, and plus East Timor as well. So it all happened at the same time. So some people had the possibility to send their belongings on those by ship, like the containers with personal belongings, and there were so many that some of them in the previous slide, if you can, Gracinha, if you can go back. So here it's the famous Belém, the monument, and there was no place in the warehouses, so all the containers of people's belongings were scattered around Lisbon, where there was place. And now to the next one, you see this is 1977, the airport, the Lisbon airport. Some people, there was an agency, a Portuguese agency called IARN, which stands for IARN is the institution for just to support nationals who are coming back to Portugal. And they used to give accommodation and helped people to just to settle on a temporary basis in Portugal. But refugees, yes. But in 1977 there was nothing available, so people were still coming, and the planes were full of people, and they didn't have anywhere to go. So just accommodate themselves in the airport here, making a place wherever there was possible. So my father and my grandmother came in 1977. We came in 1976, and when we came, we were supported by IARN, and we came to live in Kampaduri. This is the place. It's not the place where we lived. We lived very close by, but I couldn't find a photograph of that place. But it was in 1976. We moved around in a few parts of Lisbon, but but my parents, but my father came later, so he had to live in a different place. That photograph here is this is from 1977 onwards. This was taken in a place called Cruz Quebrada. It's very close to the Estádio Nacional, the football stadium, and it was turned into a refugee camp, so to speak. With some people lived in tents. Many of our family friends and close friends lived there, and they were just accommodated, in bunk beds. You can see a bunk bed and lots of other things, other belongings.
I found that part of the story fascinating because it's something we had not realized before. The difficulties with which people went even to Portugal, which was relatively economically poorer in those days before it became part of the EU and all that. No.
Yeah, yes, I think it is. The process of independence and the move from from nationals from the Portuguese colonies in Africa was not a topic that people liked to talk. And it's just recently there has been more books about it. Written about, but it's been 46 years now since it all happened. So it was it was what we got.
True. Yeah. It was the
Yes.
best you could hope for, I guess. There are some questions also coming up, which we will, of course, take on later. So this is part of your book. This was in your dad's clipping book of clippings.
We found it. We found it recently. It was one of my father was quite keen in the Instituto de Saligão, and he was a member there. But and he used to to enjoy going and reading the newspapers, talking to people, and that was just interesting because this was when he lived in Goa. Because then he went to Goa to live in 1991, and then he died in 2000. So when he was there, he used to still go occasionally to the Institute Soligo.
Oh yeah, I know this. I know this. We have it also.
That
Uh,
the rules
yeah.
and then so he died in August in 2000, and he was buried there. So he's so I
Yeah,
think it was interesting.
which brings us to the point. Another very touching part of your book was the description you gave of his illness. So he gets Parkinson's at a very early age, in spite of his sports background. I mean, I don't know if there's any connection between the two at all, but he got Parkinson's maybe in his early 40s, or what was it? And then he moved down to Goa because times were tough there, so it would have been easier to manage here while his mom was still alive and things like that. And then you all were there and he was here, and of course your mom also came here after some time because she got a job in the embassy. But after also, when he passed away, his passing was very very sudden. And I liked your style of narration. I don't think you attempted to be at all dramatic, but it is very dramatic because there's so much feeling coming out in that writing. So you talk about the phone call you received when your father dies, and you knew what was coming, and you had a sleepless night the previous night, and then you come to the hospital and you find his body and you're shocked, and then you talk about the funeral and you remember people almost as if it was yesterday, and who said to you what. And I think there are very strong feelings described there and expressed there. But just to explain how the book goes. Sorry, carry on.
My father got Parkinson's when he was in his 30s, I believe. and so the illness was not well known, at least for us. Um, as far as I know, no one in the family has that. So it was quite disturbing because one, we didn't know what it was, and two, he was quite young. Even the doctors, when it was found out, they were a bit surprised why it happened in a person like him, because he was quite athletic and young and all those things. He was diagnosed with the condition by South African doctors in Johannesburg, and and after that it was that was in the maybe 1972, probably 1972, 73. So everything got was very fast because in 1974 was the revolution in Portugal. 75 was the independence, and 76 we moved to Lisbon. So everything was just went very quickly, and my parents never really discussed about his illness. So with us, me and my sister. So and for me, it was a bit. It was a bit difficult to accept, because when I looked around, I would see other people's fathers quite okay, and my father was not okay, and so I didn't. Sometimes I didn't feel very comfortable with that, but it just went by. But my father was quite a strong person, I think I would say, in mind. He had a strong mind, and he always encouraged us to do our best, and don't pay attention to things what others do or others say. You just do what you think it is right, and he always encouraged us to study. He was very keen in education, and that was another reason why we stayed in Portugal instead of going to Goa, because that thought came across my parents' minds at several in several occasions. But there was something that both of them agreed was the education, and also the health system. So that we stayed in Portugal. But well, my father never worked in Portugal, so he wasn't well enough to work. So it was just my mother working. So things were a bit difficult at the time, just with one income. Um, my sister and I were lucky to be able to continue studying, because we got some books and from the school, and we got grants
the the
for
the, the old
school.
the old days the old days always look like the good old days, and I know you're playing it down
Yes,
now because it's a long way away and we don't feel the pain of those times, but I can imagine how difficult it must have been, because life was much more difficult in the 70s in many parts of the world, particularly those which went through a bit of trauma. And quite a few areas of Goan diaspora had these problems, but not all. Some of them did well. Some of them did well after a little bit of a struggle. But in Portugal and Mozambique, there was, I guess, much more uncertainty. Like even in places like Goa and Brazil, and so I can get what you're saying. But maybe Gracinia should tell us her point of view, because she was much younger then, and probably she saw it less than what you did, but maybe from more of a youngster's eyes. Grasa.
Oh, okay. I was just listening to the story, and I think it is true. My dad was like an inspiration for us, but the strong arms were from my mom. She just took a big decision to work and provide for all of us, and that was the main thing. I mean, they provide us different things, different opportunities. But in those days, on the 70s, because we were away from the family, my dad's family, the Goan family from Saligão, so there was no much of communication. So they thought we were living in a different planet, and that's why the book now, I hope the book goes and spreads the real story, because they thought we were living in the space with all the the things that they were imagining that we got. But that's why I'm very fond of the book, because it says the reality, the true story of what happened. And there are lots of Goan people who were living in Portugal and also from Mozambique who came, and they can also prove that that was the real thing, because we were refugees when we came from Mozambique.
No,
We should go to Goa because it was the original. But my parents took a courage decision to go to Portugal, which was
a big risk, a big risk, a big risk.
yeah, it was an upgrade, and no one knew of Portugal. Portugal was like in the other side of the world, and
On
to
another planet,
remind
planet.
yes, I came I came to Portugal with my suitcase with just my clothes. I didn't have my toys, my we didn't have a house, we didn't have anything. So I just came with my clothes. With I didn't have books, I didn't have toys, I didn't have anything. So it was very tough. And my parents, especially my mom, um, she took a job, and she raised us with the possibilities that she had. And because my dad, he got sick, and but the family in Goa, they didn't know the the gravity of the sickness of him. So they will keep pushing him with all the things that they wanted to him to, because he was the man of the family. Because my grandparents were had gone had they passed away, so he was the man of the family. He was the man of the family in Mozambique, in Portugal, and in Goa. But they didn't realize. So that's why I think that this book must be read to many people if they want to see to know the story, because it's nice to know the reality.
No, I understand. I understand perfectly. I understand perfectly what you're saying, Grasa. If you don't mind, just the yeah volume.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, no. So I understand perfectly what you're saying, because very often there is a misunderstanding of the expatriate, in the home
Yes,
society. So in Goa, we have certain ideas about the expat. Today, for the first time, with the net, with communication at such a fast pace, with the possibility to create books, of niche interest, suddenly we are seeing many more sides of the story. Of course, someone might say that you all are just looking at the Goan side, you all are not looking at the Mozambique side. And I do accept that there are many aspects to reality, there are many truths, there are multiple truths. So, like, this is, of course, one of the truths which is as valid as any other truth. So, there would be an African nationalist perspective on Mozambique, and there would be a Portuguese colonial perspective on Mozambique. And your point of view plays a crucial role in in kind of filling in what we didn't know about the Goans in Portuguese in Mozambique in that sense. But tell us, how did you all manage to adjust in Lisbon once you all were there? What was difficult? What was challenging? You all were kids, and how were you all treated? And how did you all carry on your careers? And where did you all reach in life?
Okay, if I can say that it was we were Portuguese nationality, and my parents always wanted us to learn Portuguese, so we are fluent in Portuguese. Unfortunately, we don't know how to speak in Konkani because it would affect us here in Lisbon, having a different accent. So I never learned Konkani. That's why I couldn't never spoke to my granny in Goa. We couldn't understand each other because I don't know a word of Konkani. But we got along. Mozambique was a Portuguese colony, so we went to school. My mom provided us the conditions to go to study, and we went all the way in school. And my father was the soul of the house. He was like today. He just give us the direction. He's like a como é que diz farol?
A
Lighthouse,
guiding
lighthouse,
like a guiding
Yes,
light.
he
guiding light.
was just yeah. He was a poet. He always inspires us to do great things because he somehow in his life he couldn't manage to do. So he inspired us to do the things he could not do. And my mom, she provides us the conditions to do. So we are very grateful for them. And and this book is like a thanks to both of them. And for the family who remains in Goa, my dad's family, I hope it's helped them to understand how we got to this point.
So you became a maths teacher. You became a maths teacher, Grasa.
Yes.
And
Because we didn't have many opportunities to do different things like athletics or music or some other things because we didn't have much of opportunities. We had to pay, and that was only my mom working. So the school was an open door for me. So I went to all the way till I did my master's in maths, and that's what I could do. Uh, uh, that was what I could do of what my mom had provided me. I went to Goa with my first wage when I
I see.
got to when I start as a teacher. My first wage, my first money was to go to Goa, and that's how we lived here. So it wasn't easy.
And of course, now we have most unfairly kidnapped you and repurposed you as our Portuguese teacher. Do you want to say a word about that?
Oh, that was a big project. The COVID 19 has opened so many doors for the ones who are next to me. I couldn't go without a mask, but I could go to the other side of the world. And I wanted to do something on the village of Saligao, which it was the birthplace of where my dad came. So he came from there, and it is my very pleasure to do something in the village, and if it is online, it's better because I'm I'm on my place, but I can be with you all, and I'm very happy to meet you all, Saligon people.
No, but of course it's beyond
who
Saligaon. It's a pan Goa thing. It's not just a Saligaon thing. So the Portuguese classes which you are doing online, we are very grateful for which you volunteered to do using Google Classrooms and things like that. But anyway, Carolina, you'll tell us something about where your career took you.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Where could you tell us something about where your career took you to, your life and training and job?
Yeah, I can do like my sister say. My said my parents were the main culprits that where we get where we are now, because my if we think like that, say my father was the soul, my mother was the body, so it just helped us, and of course we I continued school. I was lucky enough to use all my facilities to study. I went to a law school in Lisbon, and I graduated. I started my training as a lawyer. So my first job as well. One of my first jobs were I started as a lawyer, and I traveled to Goa in '98. It was end of '98, and it was also with my salary. So it was good and a little bit extra because we just did things together with my parents, the rest of the family, and it was just very nice being there. And so yeah, I started as a lawyer. Afterwards, I studied social care, because health and social care is one of my passions. I like biology very much, so anything to do with the health as well is interesting for me. And I'm not practicing law at the moment. I'm working as a legal advisor. So I'm quite happy to combine the two qualifications. So it was good, and that that's me.
We have a small but very interested audience here. Interested audience. I'd like to acknowledge particularly two persons. One is Minin Rodriguez, who is from Kolwa and based in Karachi till recently, and he has done a lot of work writing, describing the lives and the times of the Goans of Pakistan in Karachi in particular. And I don't know if he's still here with us, but he has put together a book recently, and earlier he ran this website called the Goans of Pakistan.org. And of course, there's Roland Francis, who has been bombarding us with a lot of questions. And if you all don't answer some of them, I'm going to be in trouble. So Roland is actually from Bombay, and he's written some very fascinating pieces about the Goan life in Bombay, particularly in Baikala and those areas. And his articles are the kind of stuff that go around viral, that get forwarded on YouTube, sometimes with proper acknowledgement, sometimes without acknowledgement, and things like that. He wrote particularly one piece, one in particular, he wrote one interesting piece on this lady called Cotton Mary, who was this Anglo-Indian elderly, quite poverty-stricken person who went around seeking alms with a small child. And when people read her piece, but this piece is not only about Cotton Mary, it's about the full society of Bombay, just like how your book is not about your dad and your family, but it's about much more. So similarly, Roland's article talks about the Goans in Bombay and the Anglo Indians and how they interacted. So he has one question here. He says, I appreciate your recounting of the good and the bad. Now, what were the ugly parts of your experiences in Mozambique and Portugal? Okay, typical Roland. Come over to y'all.
Um, well, there are good parts and bad parts, but when it comes to experience, like I say, I don't remember having bad experiences because I only consider a bad experience if I don't learn anything from it. So I always learn from my experiences. So I would say that, for example, the independence was challenging. Because the independence in Mozambique was challenging because we saw all the military in the streets, and all that would be, quite could be frightening for young people like us. Going to Portugal, we were not alone. There were many people from many countries all gathered together in in Lisbon. We probably were not that bad because many of our Goan friends and family from Mozambique, we traveled together, and we stayed not close by, not far away, and we helped each other. So it helped the process of integration going a little bit better than if we were completely isolated and alone. So yeah, it was that. But I mean, very horrible experience. I can't say we had. No.
But at I don't want to, seem that I'm overlooking the multiple realities, because one of our earlier books was a book on Mozambique by the widow of Aquino Briganza, who was the one of the few Goans who took the side of the black nationalist cause, and who was a close lieutenant to Samora Machel and died on the plane crash which killed Samora. So I'm sure that people like him would have a totally different story to tell. But I'm not for a moment reducing your story or his story. I'm just saying that there are multiple versions of reality and multiple realities almost. We have with us also Shirley Gonsalves, who has done her MPhil on the early uh, Goan graduates of Grant Medical College, early Luso Indian, not Goan. So that includes Goan, East Indian, and maybe Parsi also. So she has a question. She's researching into her family story, and in fact, her great grandfather JB Pinto from Saligaon. Sorry for bringing in Saligaon again. I think there's too much incestuousness going on here, but her great grandfather wrote one of the first books on migration in English. In that sense, there were other books in Portuguese before that, but he was in Nigvado, not very far from your house, maybe 500 meters away from your house on the other side
Okay.
of the road. So JB Pinto, he was there in those days, but I think you wouldn't know him, of course. So that's that. But sorry, carry on.
In like just to comment, you mentioned about Aquino de Bragança. Um, I also remember Oscar Monteiro. He was one of when Samora Machel um, uh, went became president. Oscar Monteiro was a Goan. He was part of his cabinet, and for some Goans, that was a little bit surprising because my parents, for example, knew his family, and but again, it was a choice. Like I said, some people decided to stay in Mozambique, some people decided to leave, and so when I wrote what happened to us, it was just from a personal point of view. And I'm just stating the facts. I don't go into the social or the political or military problems. So that was part of it. My parents knew other known Goans who after the independence went into politics. Um, but that was their choice. For some of them it was okay. I mean, it is. We 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 left very early from out soon after the independence, so we kind of lost contact with things that happened in Mozambique after, say, 77. That was when my father left, and we were so much concentrated in our lives in Portugal that we almost forgot how the situation was in Mozambique. And it wasn't easy, because it was a civil war for almost 20 years, so it was tough. But we don't have any family in Mozambique, so that's why we didn't pay so much attention. And
No,
yeah.
that's perfect. And I think you're making a very valid point, because whenever we talk about Goan migration, we look at the success stories at, say, Antonio Costa, the Prime Minister of Portugal, and maybe Kitvaz, who is now facing controversy. But the high points of Goan migration, there have also been a whole lot of problem areas of Goan migration, and there still are. And they keep coming up, and we don't know where they've come up next. And in Goa, we've just forgotten about it. We pretend to act as if it doesn't exist, and all these kind of problems. But whether it is Uganda, or whether it is Malawi, where 200 Goan families were thrown out overnight. Few people talk about it. Whether it is Kuwait, whether it is Angola, Mozambique, a whole lot of traumatic events have happened. Karachi, after the Indo-Pak relationships soured and things like that, people still find it difficult to get visas to return to Goa. So there have been a lot of things, and I think your book focuses on one very crucial piece of the jigsaw and helps us to understand it all. But there's an interesting question from Shirley. So she wants to work on her own family history. She's already done a lot, and her husband is Scottish. He's also an historian, and he's going to write something fascinating about the relationship between Goa and Britain shortly. But Shirley's question is this: if you had a chance to ask questions to your dad, what would these questions have been? A very specific question to you.
If I had, I would have asked him to write down the lyrics of a song he used to sing to us when we were babies. And the song was in Konkani, so I tried to get the lyrics, but I'm not so sure, because I just sing as I hear, so I don't know. I tried to sing it to some Goan friends, old people, old persons, but they don't know that. So I think I would ask about that lyrics.
Don't worry. Maybe we'll find some online solution for that, because there should be someone who would be able to understand it. Things have suddenly become much more easier to do online, and I think would you like to share some links about online connections? In particular, there is the Bera Goans who have a Facebook group. It's not a group; they have an identity there called on Facebook. If I could just maybe screen share and show it to you. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's a bit unusual, because it's actually a just a sec. Yeah, it's an identity. So they've created this identity called Goises the Bera, and the first name is that, and the surname is Bera. So it's like a person there on
Yes,
Facebook.
it is a group
Yeah.
that
No, it's not a group.
they
It's not a group, Grasa. It's a person. It's like they've created it like a person. So I've just posted, of course, something about our discussion today. But so this person, this fictional person, has all these friends, and yeah. So that's one thing. The other thing is, of course, this famous or infamous or small quiet group which we recently created. Sorry, just a sec. Let me get out of this, and I'll take you. I'll try to show you.
Yeah, but by a group, they are like a social group who
Okay.
provides some functions and activities here for the Goans who came from Africa and are living in Portugal.
In Lisbon. In Lisbon.
Yes,
Okay. So they meet up.
they do like activities like dances and activities like picnics and like that,
I
lunches.
I see. I see. The other thing, what we were trying to set up was this group of Goans on WhatsApp. I was just helping my classmate called Reginald D'Souza, Reginaldo Ricardo D'Souza. So he is running this group, and it's a WhatsApp group which people are welcome to join. If anyone is interested, I'll give you his contacts. I'll give you Reginald's contacts maybe before we finish or whatever, and you can get in touch with him, because I think that the Mozambique Goans have, at least as far as Goa goes, are not so visible as yet. But of course, you have visibility there. So there are a few more comments. Maybe before we wind up, we can just these brief encounters are becoming a bit of a joke, because it goes on like for 1.5 hour. Like this has been going on for exactly 1 hour and 21 minutes so far, which is fine by me. I'm enjoying it, and I'm learning all the time. But it's no more, it's no longer brief by any stretch of imagination. So some comments that are coming in here, I wonder if there are questions. Okay, this is more of an observation, I guess, from Ricardo Afonso, who says that his maternal uncle in Mozambique was Theo Cesar Mascarenhas of Colva. I guess you all can read it, right? It's visible to you all
Yes.
also. Uh, and yeah, and of course some other general comments. Uh, so thanks Shirley for the feedback, and she's saying it's the first time I've heard a story about Goans living in Mozambique. Your parents will be proud of you, I'm sure. Uh, Minin has a question of whether you all heard about the Goans from Karachi in
Uh,
Mozambique. Anything of that?
from Karachi, no, I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't remember any my dad speaking about Goans from Karachi.
The connections did happen, and there were also marriage alliances and things like that between these places. Although
Mm,
one was the English speaking world and one was Portuguese, but it did happen at times. And of
mm.
course, there's a compliment from Roland Francis. That's for both of y'all. And yeah, so I think we've covered most of the area. Any things that you would like to add? But maybe before winding up, I'll ask Carolina or Grasa or both to comment on two things that struck me from the book. One was your dad's and your parents' emphasis on education, and that's one thing that the Goan diaspora and Goans in Goa have always focused on a lot. So maybe you would like to comment on that. But the second question, I'll throw it in here itself. You wrote something very touching about your dad burning his violin. So maybe we'll end on that note. But first, you tell us about the education thing, his emphasis on education.
I didn't hear the question,
Okay.
Frederick.
First
Could
question
you
is your
repeat,
dad's
please?
emphasis on education, your dad's and your mom's, your parents' education on your education, on both of your education. You know?
I can say
Yeah.
that for my parents, education was it was like a treasure. I remember my dad saying that I will not give you a house or money. I'm not going to leave you that. I'm going to give you an opportunity to study and get your life as you want. And that is my heritage. Como é que se diz herança?
Heritage.
My
Inheritance,
heritage,
inheritance,
yeah, to
inheritance.
you. So that was the things. I mean, he as I said previously, we came to Portugal. I reached Portugal with my clothes only. So I didn't have a house. I didn't have money. I didn't have luxury. So the things that my parents gave me was the a hard way to study and get my education. And with the education that they gave me, would provide for myself, and that was the main thing. So, and actually, it is true because all the things that are material, they just come to an end. But education, as long as you have health, you are well. I mean, it's the wealth. It is the best thing to give to someone is the opportunity to do something.
Yeah.
So I'm very actually I didn't like to study much when I was young, but I think it was the best choice that I made was to study and to get my education because it's the best thing. Because with the education, you can go anywhere and do whatever you want. You can have a house in the moon if I if
Don't
it's
follow Elon Musk.
possible.
Elon Musk. Yeah. But but anyway, but there are some specific questions coming up. Where can we get a copy of the book? I think Amazon is the answer. Where do you the English
No,
version?
Amazon is not the answer.
No?
I printed only a few copies for family and friends. So if someone is really interested in reading the book, I can sell it privately. It's only for a private sale. Um, the intention here is not to make profit. So any proceeds the price is a symbolic price for the book, and the proceeds will be donated to educational project actually that we support in North Thailand at the moment.
Another
So
question. Sorry,
that's
sorry.
it.
Were Goans forced to leave Mozambique in the 1970s? This is a question. Were they forced to leave, or did the circumstances become so tough that they chose to leave?
Uh, well, Mozambique was got independence in 1975. So they were not forced to leave, but they could stay in Mozambique if they wanted. There was always a possibility to apply for Mozambican nationality, stay there, or even stayed there as Portuguese nationals. Some of them stayed. Uh, but the majority decided to leave because they didn't feel uh, they w- they didn't feel comfortable, and some of them they were not exactly sure why they had to leave, but they kind of followed the crowd. Because their friends or their families or other reasons that everyone was going, so they also going. So they also went. So there was you could stay if you wanted. So there are many Goans who stayed there, and they are quite happy. So
Yeah, and then that last story about your dad, would you like to tell it to us? So he discovered that he's unwell, and it kind of crushes him because it's so young. And what happens when he comes home with the violin?
uh, so my father was I I maybe he was angry that he got ill, and so he got maybe upset because we were small and worried that he couldn't provide for us. We didn't know what the future would look like, and 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 he was quite an very curious
Upset.
person. So he was a curious person. So he was studying to become a radio technician. And so that involved using tools he had to make a radio, in for his final exam, and that involved using very small nails and instruments, and it was difficult because he was shaking. And so he got really upset with that. And he also liked to play violin, and he was not able to play violin, so he just broke the violin and burned. So it was just,
But it comes across as it's a very touching story when I read it. Your mom also studied a lot when after having kids, and she did her schooling at that level, or how did it work?
her father died when my mother was young. So it was just my grandmother and her sister, who was a spinster. And my grandmother didn't go to school. I mean, she went to school, but she only studied until class 3. And the reason for that was that her father had a son. And those days, the priority was for the boys to study. So he'd sent the son, so my mother's uncle, to study in Bombay, I think. And for that he had to pay for his studies. So my grandmother didn't go to school, but she used to work as a dressmaker. She worked as a dressmaker at home, and my mother had to also help out to provide. And she also gave private tuitions to the children in the neighborhood, to read and write, sort of. So after then she worked in the photo company, I think, a photographer. Um, Later on, she got married, and she worked for the Portuguese government in the different ministries. And she studied. She continued to study because she was working at study and studying at the same time. She managed to study English. She took her driving license, and then
Wow.
that was helpful. And we had a car in Mozambique, so it was very good because she could drive. Because my father was not able to drive that much. And in Portugal, she worked for the different ministries, and she ended up working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That was her last job. So she went to Goa to work for the consulate of Portugal, and then she retired.
Amazing story. Amazing story. On that
So it
on
was.
that note, we'll call it a day or a night. But Graça, maybe the last word should go to you, where you say something in Portuguese to those who understand the language here. Maybe some of our audience does. Some of them to Graça. Graça, would you like to say something in Portuguese?
Ok. Então, eu agradeço a oportunidade de estar aqui. Espero que possam ler o livro. É uma história muito bonita. E depois a contribuição também vai ser para uma causa também muito boa, que está ligada à educação. E muito obrigada.
Thank you.
Obrigada. Thank you, Frederick, for this opportunity, for highlighting the book, which is
No,
very precious for us.
it's not a favor at all, because I think these aspects need to be noticed and noted. So I'm just doing my job. Thanks for coming. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank
The
you.
last 1 hour and 35 minutes. Yeah, almost. Thank you so much. And with this, we'll disconnect. And yeah, and
Okay.
maybe if you want to just share your contact addresses or what, something like that, so we can just put it out here if it's okay by you all, or what do you
Yeah,
all
I've
prefer?
got my email address if anyone wants to
Just what's it?
ask a particular question. That I also take, before we go off stream, I would take this opportunity to thank you, Frederick, for this opportunity to talk about what I wrote, and I hope we the Portuguese cafe course
Turn successful.
goes
Not
well
with me, but with the others it will.
with
But
the
tell me your
others.
address. Tell me your address just to share it with everyone else.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, but your address, you want to type it, or will I type it here, or what?
Shall
Carolina?
Where would we type?
Okay,
I don't know.
I think only I can type. So if you just
you,
let
you
Yes.
me, if you
you have
spell
a
it out.
PowerPoint no fim?
Sorry.
Tens
You can type it,
you can type,
Yeah,
Frederick.
yeah.
but I don't know it by heart.
Okay.
Is okay. Maybe se calhar
I
podes
can
pôr.
put it on the private. I can put mine.
Okay, we'll add it. We'll add it later when we'll add it at the
Yeah.
bottom of the video. So that's fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks again. Thanks so much. So I'll end the stream now. Good night, everyone. Thank you for being
Okay.
with us.
Thank you. Bye
Good
bye.
afternoon. Good night. Thank you,
Thank you.
sister.
Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Sister Ethel. Sister Ethel is also saying an interesting interview. Sister Ethel was in Rome. She's a Catholic nun from Kalangut. So nice to have you. Thanks. Thanks. Good night.
And she's our cousin as well.
Oh gosh, interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so Edwin is also related to you then. Edwin.
Who?
Sister,
Edwin Pereira.
yeah,
He's
sister
also
sister
he's
Ethel's
also our
brother.
cousin.
Yeah, so Edwin is my classmate, and in Goa, the 6 degrees
Okay.
of separation are not six, as you know. So if we ask some more questions, we would stumble across all kinds of relations. So
Yeah.
we better stop it here. Thanks, thanks,
Okay.
and good
Thank
night.
you. Bye
Thank you so
bye.
much. Thanks.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.